listeners, and welcome back to the Skylight Books podcast. We're here for another Skylit author interview. I'm your host for this episode, Justin Reamer, and I'm here today with the author of the book on Clueless, As If, Veronica Litt. Hello.
Hi. It's truly a Skylit podcast today. Ba-doom.
Exactly.
I'm so sorry.
Perfect. No, you
already
nailed
lost
it.
all my listeners. Thanks for having me.
I mean, they've downloaded it by now, so that's all that matters. We got the numbers.
Yeah,
so.
Too late, guys.
And this book is in the ECW Press's Pop Classic series, which is a nice, it's a little thick to be totally pocket-sized, but not a really daunting series of books on pop culture that ranges from some video games. You got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in there, Jurassic Park, all sorts of stuff. How did you get hooked up with them, and how did you decide to do a book on Clueless?
So ECW is a press based in Toronto, and that's where I lived for about 12 years. So I had heard of them. I first learned about the series when I was group watching The Bachelorette with friends. And one of my friends said, hey, I know a girl who wrote a book about The Bachelor. And that girl was Susanna Schauler. She wrote a really exemplary pop classic on The Bachelor. We all read it. We thought it was brilliant. And then I moved through the entire series. And I always sort of had this pet project where I wanted to pitch a book to them. And I was torn between either doing a big action franchise or doing Clueless, because it sort of aligned all my interests. And ultimately, I went with Clueless. And it's sort of like Clueless is the center of the multi-pronged Venn diagram of my interests. I like girly art. I like romance. I like Jane Austen adaptations. I like the 1990s. And at the center, just like a shining star, Clueless. So I thought that has to be the one.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we were talking a little bit about your teaching. So what do you teach? Like, what do you focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of motley. I was trained as an 18th centuryist, so I read the kinds of books that Austen would have read when she was growing up. Mm-hmm. And so that's technically my bread and butter, but my job is at a small school called Cape Breton University on the far, far east coast of Canada, right by the ocean. And I predominantly teach first-year English classes, but every now and again I get to teach an oddball fourth-year course. And so some of those fun ones have been like an interdisciplinary course on home, a course about classical myths and modern adaptations. And that's what I taught Portrait of a Lady on Fire with. And then also I taught a really fun class last year called Reading Sex and Gender Pre-1800. That was a ton of fun.
Oh, yeah, I could imagine. What is your history? I mean, I know from the book, but I can kind of assume, but like, what's your history with Clueless? I assume it came to you as a kid.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was 4 when the movie came out. I don't super remember the first time I watched it. It sort of always existed, in my brain at least, like the Bible. And I do know that when I was younger, I really straightforwardly just enjoyed it. I thought it was so fashionable and funny and shiny. And as I got older, I sort of, got a bit away from that. I was pretty strongly conditioned and influenced by my surroundings to maybe start thinking about art more as, okay, what will impress the people around me? Not what do I like and what am I interested in, but what will get me the cultural currency to impress these boys or to impress these cool girls. And so I started turning to art that was more doom and gloom, like Watchmen and these really like gory graphic novels and tragedies and things. And then it was in my grad school years that I sort of found my way back to girly lit and pop culture and realized that it's just as, interesting and intricate and sophisticated and compelling as maybe the fancier stuff. It just maybe needs a little more time to marinate because it's hard to see the water you swim in. And that's what pop culture is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like this is a really good moment for Clueless, not only just because it's the 30th anniversary this year. And actually, a couple weeks ago, I went to an outdoor screening here in LA of it, and everybody loved it. People were dressed as the characters, because that's LA, of course. But, yeah, and it's also a movie too that so I was a little bit older in 1995, but I watched it, I enjoyed it, and I had liked Amy Heckerling before that, and I was like, yeah, it was fun, and then kind of forgot about it, and then in recent years, I feel like I've seen it at a couple different repertory screenings and been like, oh, this is really quite good. Like,
it's so sharp.
yeah,
So the script is really masterful. It's a tight 90. I love a 90-minute movie,
yeah,
and she really is so concise with her plotting. And then also the dialogue is just so great. She almost develops a particular dialect for her characters, and it's become so influential, like Buggin', Total Monet, Toe Up, etc. So I think the script is really the key to the magic. I mean, it's the backbone that the performances are magical and the fashion is iconic, but that script is really holding everything up, and it's just such a great classic comedy film script.
yeah, I agree. And as I was sort of saying, is like, I think it's sort of like in this moment we're looking back at the 90s, and certainly younger people are appreciating it, but just sort of being like, oh yeah, a lot of things we took for granted. Like, there was like a lot more craftsmanship that went into like our light entertainment than it feels like even happens now sometimes. So when you were pitching the book, like, was it a pretty easy go, or what was that like for you?
It was a shockingly easy go after a terribly hard go. That was entirely my fault. So I sat on this project for literal years. I mean, I mentioned that group watch with The Bachelorette that sort of introduced me to the series. I mean, that must have been like 2017. It's 2025,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I wanted to pitch a book, and I went through a couple iterations. One where my pitch really had no central thesis. One where I had drunk the Kool-Aid of the cool thing to do is just cancel it because it's not aged perfectly. And that was definitely a strain I saw, at least in mainstream pop culture criticism for a time in the 2010s. So I was like, oh God, I guess I have to be super critical, but that just didn't feel right. I'm glad I didn't move forward with that pitch. But when I did develop this, at long last, I sent it in. I heard back from the wonderful editor, Jen Suk-Fong Lee, who shepherded this book through completion. And we had papers signed within a month. So I feel like all that marinating and stewing and reworking the pitch, it actually, it really helped me in the long run, even though, wow, it took a really long time to get started. So it was a very smooth process, honestly.
I mean, but you saying that the amount of time it took makes a lot of sense reading the book, because I was a little bit shocked at how thorough it is, but not in a way that feels like unduly like picking over minutia, just sort of like really kind of like cogently taking everything at once, sort of really in like steeped in like enjoyment of it, but then also not afraid to like problematize it and just be like, you know what, in the 90s we weren't great with race, we're kind of ignoring class, like all sorts of things like that. And it's a really great read. Like I stayed up a little too late last night finishing it because I didn't want to break up the read. I just kind of read it in one long go. So
well, thank you so much. That means a lot.
Yeah, no, I really recommend it. It's a really good read.
I was trying to balance, the academic stuff and the sort of rigorous critique with the entertainment and enjoyment. Because I guess maybe that gets back to something you mentioned earlier, right? How these comedy movies and these pieces of art that we turn to again and again for, when we need to be uplifted or when we just want relief or enjoyment, they sort of hide their sophistication in plain sight, as though it's easy to cheer someone up, as though it's uncomplicated to present a utopia. I have a line at the end of the book where I'm trying to bring all my threads together, and I write about how it's a lot easier to reflect a current dystopia, like to reflect the flawed world we live in, than to do maybe what Amy Heckerling does and what so much girly media does, and try to actually imagine something a little better. You actually have to take a leap of faith and present something a little different to the equation. And that requires imagination and optimism. And I know that those are hard to muster a lot of the time. So I really do admire girly art for its unique, emphasis on those qualities.
And in your, I think it's you have a chapter on girly art. You sort of present 10 other great, or maybe it's in an interlude, you present 10 other great ones. And there's definitely a couple that I'm like, oh, you know what? I never caught up on 13 going on 30. And also, I have a very important question for you. Why is Channing Tatum a human potato, and why is that a compliment, as you say in the text?
Okay. No, it's so funny. The people who get it, get it.
Okay.
So there's something about Channing Tatum where like he doesn't have hair and his skin tone is very uniform. So there's just sort of this like impression of like a beautiful tater tot. And also his name is Tatum. It reminds me of a tater tot. Like to me, a potato is the highest compliment possible. Like my best friend, we have an ongoing joke where they are a potato. I got them a personalized necklace that says potato. So I only mean this as a compliment, but a potato is a magical food. It's affordable, it's delicious, it's versatile. You know, you could do worse than be called a beautiful human potato.
All right. I get it now. Yeah.
I'm going to shoot my shot. Channing, if you want to downgrade, I'm here.
Well, it's funny too, because I brought this up to a couple of coworkers yesterday. I was like, what do you think human potato means? And they're like, oh, I get it. But then they both gave me completely different explanations. So
what were they? What did they think?
Well, one of my coworkers thought that it was like, well, I see it. Channing is almost like Mr. Potato Head, and you put him in a different situation, and it's like he can be a little more chic or he can be a little more shabby. And it's like you can dress him up and change it. And I was like, okay. Interesting. And I forget what the other one was, but that one really stuck with me. I was like, all right, I guess he's a Mr. Potato Head man.
Yeah, he's a genre hopper, right? He can do it all. He can do comedy, he can do dance, he can do action. I love that reading.
Well, let's get into the book. Part of what really kept me reading is your style, which, as you said, is touching on like a lot of sort of more academic ideas, but like really is very conversational the whole time and often quite funny. I definitely like kind of chuckled to myself.
Thanks. I tried to make it entertaining. Yeah.
Well, it's also funny because I think early on you talk about butt crazy in love, but like not in the context of the movie. And for some reason I forgot that quote. And I was just like, all right, that's a choice. And then then you bring it back and I'm like, oh, right. It's a quote from the movie. Okay. Yeah. But
yeah, sometimes my voice and Cher's voice do overlap in a way that I'm like, do I need to think about this more?
Cool. So read the section you wanted to read.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
I would be delighted to. So, hi, Skylight Books listeners. So, this is a section from my second chapter, which is a chapter where I think I overthink an underthinker. So, I write extensively about the heroine Cher, who is, I think, a platonic ideal of a particular character type, which is the ditz. And so, in this chapter, I mull over all that the ditz character has offered us over their centuries of existence, and then maybe some pitfalls we see in 1990s ditzes and where we might go from here. So this is from the middle of the chapter. A little bit of contextual information you need is that at the end of Clueless, there is a Pismo Beach disaster. And this is basically, it's very vague in the movie because we don't want to leave that comic register, but something has gone wrong on a beach and people are sort of, evicted from their homes because of a natural disaster. So when I say Pismo Beach, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, with that said, I'm going to get going. Back in the day, classic authors like Frances Burney, Miguel de Cervantes, John Dryden, and Sarah Fielding set the stage for Cher Horowitz with a shared character type, the unwitting social critic, whose brilliance lay in their hyperbolic ignorance. These figures lived outside of high society, which let them innocently notice and criticize the unhinged social norms, scare quotes, that everyone else took for granted. So, for example, novels by women use this character to reveal the rotten patriarchal foundation of 18th century life. In Frances Burney's famous novel Evelina, 1778, the country bumpkin heroine attends a ball and refuses to dance with a suitor she dislikes. This makes complete sense to Evelina and to modern readers, even as it causes a scandal in the novel. In the world of the London elite, women were essentially required to accept dance invitations from men whether they liked them or not. Because Evelina innocently fails to understand this pernicious social norm, she also manages to challenge its outrageous underlying idea that one man's pleasure matters more than one woman's comfort. The message behind this sequence, and so many others like it, is to remind readers that it is way too easy to naturalize our social surroundings, to take their cruelty and illogic as inevitable, unchangeable. Ignorant ditzes can use their critical distance from society to reveal that no, That is not how things have to be. If the water we swim in is poisoned, you don't say, oh well, and dive back in. You confront the problem and try to fix it. For these and other ills, sunlight, in the form of a bird brain with nothing to lose, may be the best disinfectant. Cher contributes to this worthy cause in what is perhaps her most famous scene. You know the one. She's walking through the courtyard leading up to her high school, clad in glorious yellow plaid, and soliloquizing about the deficiencies of high school boys. Her voiceover declares, they're like dogs. You have to clean them and feed them, and they're just like these nervous creatures that jump and slobber all over you. Right on cue, an aforementioned high school boy leaps up and eagerly puts his arm around Cher. In another movie, the heroine might have just let this guy invade her personal space to avoid a confrontation. And frankly, this is probably what I would have done in high school. And maybe now, I'm a lifelong conflict avoider. And when I find myself in uncomfortable situations, my knee-jerk response is to make sure that other people don't feel awkward, even and especially when I myself want to die. In Clueless, though, Cher immediately voices her displeasure. She yells, "Ew, get off of me! Ugh, as if!" and shoves the boy out of frame. You can hear him collide with something, hopefully trash, off screen. It's an immaculate 10 seconds of cinema, where social codes could easily lead a teenage girl to resign herself to unwanted romantic overtures. Clueless draws a line in the sand. If an entitled stranger touches your body, you are well within your rights to yell and push them away. Ditzes are like mental power bottoms. People underestimate them as idiots, only to realize their error too late. Think of breathy, brilliant Lorelei Lee in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, who knows full well that she can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like it. Or how Elle Woods, the pert heroine of Legally Blonde, wins a murder trial by understanding perm maintenance. One allegedly dumb blonde even outsmarted the House of Un-American Activities Committee during the Red Scare. At an interrogation, the old Hollywood comedian Judy Holliday confounded questioners by channeling the loopy illogic of her trademark character, the bimbo Billy Dawn in the comedy film Born Yesterday in 1950. My top example of this revenge of the Ditzes trend is the criminally underseen comedy Dick, released just 4 years after Clueless and certainly capitalizing on the revitalized interest and clever satires about ditzy teen girls. This movie is a fever dream alternate history of the Watergate scandal about vapid high schoolers Arlene, played by Michelle Williams, and Betsy, played by Kirsten Dunst. One character describes their intellect as follows: I have met yams with more going on upstairs. The teen girls start out as President Richard Nixon's secret youth advisors, read unpaid dog walkers, until a series of hijinks lead them to uncover recordings where Nixon admits to rigging the election. Combined with Nixon's role in the Vietnam War, Arlene pouts, war is not healthy for children and other living things. And the fact that he doesn't give his dog Checkers enough attention, this is enough for the girls to mastermind his downfall. Arlene and Betsy jointly become Deep Throat, expose Nixon's corruption, and all but force Dick to resign the presidency. Throughout all this, the girls' main emotion is not anger or sadness. It's something more primal: shock. They're astonished that this kind of corruption is even possible. This ditzy affect makes me think about a quote by the writer G.K. Chesterton. He believed that for people to, quote, resist injustice, something more is necessary than that they should think injustice unpleasant. They must think injustice absurd. Above all, they must think it startling. They must retain the violence of a virgin astonishment. End quote. The girls in Dick retain this crucial capacity to be startled, to be astonished, to find corruption not just wrong, but absurd, and thus unfit for reality. For so many people, me included, discovering yet another duplicitous politician leads to shrugs and sighs, a sense that this is the way the world is and nothing will ever change. Betsy and Arlene don't respond with this cynicism and passivity. Their purity and ditziness mean they can still be startled, and thus can channel their astonishment into tangible political change. After all, these girls literally oust Nixon from the White House. The movie ends with them holding up a sign that says, "You suck, Dick," on a rooftop. It's beautiful. We see a version of this happen with Cher in Clueless, especially in the scene where it suddenly gets through to her that the people at Pismo Beach are in peril. It's not just unkind to sit by while they suffer. It's senseless, unreasonable, illogical. This pivot moves us from a shitty moral dilemma, should I pitch in or not, to an imperative that rings as clear as a bell. When people struggle, the only thing to do is help.
Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was a great sequence to pick from. Oh, Sorry, this is a total tangent, but I
Yeah.
love that the inner cover has the
I
yellow
know.
plaid, the
Yeah,
yellow
that made
plaid of Cher's outfit. Yeah.
that made my heart very happy.
How many times do you think you sort of had to rewatch Clueless to get to the level where you are, where it's both an appreciation and also like the ability to just sort of like take it down without like demolishing it, I guess.
I mean, I've seen this movie a lot. I actually gave a presentation on Clueless in my early days in grad school, and one of the comments I got, because part of the seminar was like you had to give feedback, and one of the comments I got was, "You really know this movie, like you really know it." So I guess that's the thing with like a comfort watch, is you just return to it again and again. And I mean, I kind of view this movie like I view a beloved friend, right? Where you love the best parts of them and you clock the parts that maybe you're like, we could develop a bit more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think this movie is really well-intentioned and good-hearted. And the places where it fumbles or is not, up to 2025. And fair, it was made in 1995, right? Like, we're all from a particular context. Nothing's ever you're not going to please everyone at every moment, right? But I think having that humility and knowing that this movie is coming from a place that's trying to do good, even if it's not consistently achieving it on a 10 out of 10 level, like that's enough for me.
Yeah. And also, like, unfortunately, like hearing the stories of women filmmakers, especially in that era, like it's possible some of these choices are compromises that she had to take from executives. And the fact that she got through as much as she did is kind of astonishing on that level as well.
Yeah. One of the things that sort of surprised me was how, this movie was in development hell for many years. This was just not seen as a movie that was worth the money it would take to make it. And when it became this smash hit, it sort of opened the door for more stories about teen girls, so that maybe it wasn't as hard for someone else to get through there after Heckerling.
Yeah. Have you seen many of her other films? Do you have an opinion on her as a filmmaker in general?
You know what is so funny? I feel like Clueless is a lightning in a bottle movie. I have seen Fast Times, and I thought it was quite lovely. I watched Vamps, and I didn't quite understand it, but I want to go back. I want to go back to it. And I still haven't seen I Could Never Be Your Woman. I think I have, like, I find it to be a checkered filmography. And maybe that's part of why Clueless is the standout to me. What about you? What do you think? Are you familiar with her work?
I mean, I similarly have some gaps, but it's funny to me because like the first thing I saw was as a too young child, I saw Johnny Dangerously. So, which is kind of her offbeat Michael Keaton gangster parody comedy. So I think in my head, I've always sort of like known who she was, oddly, but just thought of her as like, she makes comedies. Sometimes they're crazy, and sometimes they're Look Who's Talking and a baby's talking.
Yes.
And,
I do know Look Who's Talking.
And I think almost in a way, maybe that's what made me assess Clueless the first time in that way, was sort of in the, like, also like I didn't see Fast Times, I'm probably till after high school, oddly, even though, it's because in a way, like, not that I wasn't precocious, but like I feel like I wouldn't appreciate like sort of the roundness of the characters, the fullness of the characters of Fast Times until later. So
yeah, I think she's maybe at her best when she's depicting kids in high school as these surprisingly, well-rounded character studies, just like you said, right? And so often in comedy, you can get that sort of flat characterization, but she manages to have that light touch that, maybe it conceals some depth that you don't expect to find.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in the case of Fast Times, the character of Spicoli, who's like the comic breakout, like when you see him in his room, you're like, oh, Spicoli is clearly like poor.
Yeah.
And like what you're saying is like she doesn't ignore it, but it's not like we're going to be sad for Spicoli. It's just sort of like he's the comic character, but his actual home life is probably a little dicey.
Yeah. Yeah. And to keep you in that light and bright boppy register, especially in Clueless, which is, I think, much more of a comedy, while Fast Times is more veering towards dramedy, coming of age. Clueless is super shiny, right? Like it really does table the darkness. And so you have a similar character to Spicoli, Travis Birkenstock, the stoner, played by the ever charming Breckin Meyer. And I have some material in the book about how, you know, he's clearly pitched as the poor kid at school, and so is Ty. And that's sort of played as a, like, the real sin isn't that, you know, poverty makes your life hard. The real sin is that other kids will bully you for being poor. And I find that to be kind of like a toothless, you know, perception. But then again, that is how a high schooler would see it, I think. So, you know, that's one of my qualms with the movie is the sort of hands-off attention to class, whereas concerns like gender and body image, you know, Heckerling really puts them front and center in a couple pretty satiric, vicious sequences. So it's sort of, it's inconsistent, you know, what she decides to critique and what she decides to sort of be like, if I don't see it, it can't be a real problem. So, yeah. Also, I've thought about this movie a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with what you were saying earlier. I feel like there are certain movies that maybe you get used to and you're just like, well, that's just how the movie goes. And like, okay, we're not going to delve into, there's only 2 Black characters who speak. And of course there are a couple. Anyhow.
Yeah. When you zoom out and you look at the plot beats, there is like this eerie rigidity with which, you know, you always get couples who are 2 of a kind in Clueless. So for instance, the 2 poor stoners end up together. The 2 rich kids, Cher and Josh, I mean, they were once related, right? 2 of a kind, honestly. They end up together. The 2 Black characters end up together. The 2 middle-class teachers end up together. And this goes back to the Jane Austen source material. And Emma, which is the 1815 novel, Comedy of Manners novel that Clueless is based on, you know, it's sort of an outlier in Austen's 6 novels because where all her other novels sort of have these cross-class romances. So like a plucky, you know, I mean, she's still rich, but she's not as rich as the man. But this plucky woman will sort of pursue and achieve marriage with this wealthy man. And so the stories seem to be saying like, you know, class doesn't matter. It's your personal qualities. And then there's Emma, which is this weird outlier narrated by someone who's at the top of the social heap, very unusual, and who is really committed to making sure everyone stays within their allotted place in society. And so when Heckerling translates this movie to high school, I mean, she retains that message, right? I think that's true to the source material and true to life. And also sort of like, oh, why is this where the idealism falters? It's an interesting limit point.
Yeah. As far as like not Austen adaptations, but Emma adaptations, like, have you seen all the films like the Gwyneth Paltrow and the Anya Taylor-Joy? Like, how did those rank as far as that goes?
I think Clueless is the best Emma adaptation, but I'm clearly biased. I think Clueless is just a great movie, okay? And I really like an adaptation that, you know, goes a little left of center of the source material. I think at this point we have so many wonderful, purist, true to the book Austen adaptations. I'm kind of chomping at the bit for something a little unexpected. But after Clueless, I really... like, it's like choosing between my children to try to choose between the Emma period, the Emma by Autumn de Wilde, which is so divine. Josh O'Connor is so funny as Mr. Elton. It's been so nice to see him get his flowers in the last few years. Mia Goth is so funny as Harriet. So I think Autumn de Wilde really gets the comedy. But then there's this really beautiful, warm, I think it's 2009 BBC 4-part miniseries with Romola Garai and Johnny Lee Miller, which is just so big-hearted. And they've got 4 hours to flesh it out. It's so romantic. It's so sweet. So, yeah. And then at the bottom is the Kate Beckinsale one. And then even lower than that is the Gwyneth Paltrow one.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's my hot tip. Sorry.
Right.
What do you think? Do you have a fave?
No. Well, I saw the Gwyneth Paltrow one years ago, and I really don't remember it. So maybe that speaks to something. But no, the Autumn de Wilde, I think is really good. And I like, it was the kind of thing where I was listening to the soundtrack for quite a while after that, because just the score and the song performances are so nice.
Yes, and Johnny Flynn's a musician. He plays Mr. Knightley, and you can see these behind the scenes footage of like the cast dancing and doing musical stuff because they're all theater kids. It's very charming. It seems to have been, like Clueless, a movie that was happy to make.
Before the record, we talked about my Letterboxd for like where's your taste? Like, what is your for?
Oh, good God, who knows? I'm so flighty. It changes every day. Clueless would be on there, definitely. Also, I found out that Clueless is in Seth Rogen's top 4. Oh. And I do take a moment in the book to shoot my shot with Seth Rogen as well. To be like, hello, hello. I think he's so charming.
Yeah, Long Shot is a great movie. Like,
right?
Oddly underseen, but like a great movie. Yeah.
I think it's one of the best rom-coms in the last decade, and it made no money. So that's my pitch. Go watch Clueless and then go watch Long Shot. For my top 4, maybe just off the top of my head, something like, I do like a big action movie. I find them like fun and entertaining and bombastic. So I rewatched Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and I thought that was just like tons of fun, like a perfect popcorn movie, like The Mummy. Like it's great. And in terms of, let me think. What have I been watching lately? I don't know. I'm hard at thinking of things off the top of my head. Let me get back to you.
Oh, no worries. I was just curious. Well, Terminator 2 is good because just because you mentioned earlier that you were like, well, maybe I'll pitch Clueless or maybe I'll pitch an action franchise. So yes. I was like, okay, this is a slightly different direction.
I know. Yeah, I wanted it to be something super mainstream and something that people weren't maybe used to having someone think hard about. Because I genuinely believe that pop culture is where we exercise our fears and anxieties and desires and values. And especially in action franchises, you can see a lot of interesting ideas about morality, heroism, villainy. So I was really tempted to do one on Fast and Furious and just like go into the saga of it. So what could have been. Yeah. But I would not put a Fast Furious movie in my top 4. No. With love and respect to Vin Diesel now.
Well, I mean, how could you choose? I mean, oddly, that's one that drew me in very late in the run. After I was like, well, it's got so many. Maybe I should check it out. And then I was just like, oh, the world and the mythology is so huge. I'm just sucked in. Like, it got me.
Yeah, totally, right? And it's also such a great group watch. You know, like even a bad movie can be a great viewing experience in the right setting, right? You gotta meet something where it's at. And I have had few theater going experiences better and more meaningful, weirdly, than seeing Furious 7 in the theaters. That's the one after Paul Walker passed away. Yeah. And like, we were brothers when we left that theater. Me and every dad crying, you know, we were bonded.
Yeah. I had this thought while you were reading, and I meant to double back. So I know that in a couple weeks, the audiobook of this is coming out, and your text is so full of footnotes, and you skip them in your reading right now, but will they be in the audiobook, and how does that work? They won't be. Okay.
They won't be, which is the heartbreaker. So I had never moved through the audiobook process, and I was surprised to find that when they regularize the text for the audiobook, they omit the footnotes as far as I know. Maybe they're there in the final product. I didn't record the audiobook. A lovely woman named Maria McCann did. So we'll see, but a lot of the action of this book is in the footnotes. So I guess maybe that's like a plug to get the print version. I don't know. I love a discursive footnote. Also, as you can probably tell, Justin, I have ADHD. So thoughts have to go somewhere. They can't all go in the body of the text.
Yeah. Well, you know, as someone who in like high school was reading like Nicholson Baker with all his footnotes, I was like, I'm ready for this. Bring it on. Because initially when I saw footnotes, I was like, oh, that's probably just like works cited. And I was like, oh, no. There's a lot of talking going down. It's
a rich vein. It's a bonus Jonas. Yeah. Enjoy.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I think people definitely because I've recently become an audiobook enthusiast just because I try to do a lot of reading and have no time.
Totally.
But that is a good thing to be like, get the physical edition because you're gonna miss some good stuff. Yeah.
You're gonna miss some jokes, some unhinged comments, some thoughtful comments. Some weed gummy fueled comments. It's a rich tapestry.
Yeah, and also, you know, some context, some historical information. It runs the gamut. The footnotes do. So. So you do early in the book pit movies, like heavy movies, against movies that you can watch that are comfort movies. Like, are there any heavy movies that hold a special place in your heart? Or is it just any heavy movie is too much to sort of cope with?
You know what? I'm not opposed to a heavy movie. And one of the things that's been really fun about continuing to watch movies is seeing genres that I previously thought, oh, that's not for me, and then digging into them. Like I got really into horror over the pandemic. I got into the Saw movies. I could also write a pop classics on the Saw movies. And like I never thought I'd be a horror person, and I ended up loving that stuff. So I reserve the right to change my mind. There could be lots of heavy movies. I will say I think that might be a return journey for me, because as I sort of mentioned earlier on, when I was in high school and undergrad, that was really what I was inundated with. So I watched a lot of Shakespeare adaptations. I watched a lot of, like, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was one of my favorite movies, and I still think it's a really beautiful movie. I haven't revisited it in a while. And I was really into, these, gritty dramas. I thought they had the prestige, and, I like a classic movie. I like a Hitchcock. I like 12 Angry Men. But I do struggle with the like social issue Oscar bait ones, like Green Book or Crash. It's like you take a couple years and you're like, oh, what was the fuss about?
Right.
And so, for me right now, I'm more into levity, and I really appreciated a recent Best Picture winner, Everything Ever All at Once. But yeah, I guess I'm not going to be like raring or chomping at the bit to see the new, like, is it Kenneth Lonergan, the one who does like Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah, Kenneth Lonergan.
Yeah, I'm not going to be lining up to see that. That's just not for me. But it is for other people, and you go forward, and I will keep my mind open, because if I'm here being like, give girly movies a chance, and I'm like, but not this other movie, So I'll keep my mind open. Do you have any recommendations? What should I try?
Oh my goodness, that's terrible. I do have movies behind me. You know what? Actually, is catching my eye that just because it's a little crazy, and it deals with sort of like weird familial issues in a kind of a crazy way, is the Jodorowsky film Santa Sangre. So it's a little fantastical. It's a little horror. It's very crazy.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's what just caught my eye while looking at the thing. So I think it's not necessarily a heavy watch, but it's a deep watch.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Yeah,
Because
I agree. I enjoyed is a weird word for it, but I was edified by Manchester by the Sea in the theater, and I have not had any desire to see it in the past 10 years. So
I can't imagine what it must be like to make that movie, right? To sit with that project for a year, to sit with that weight and that heaviness. I mean, that would take me to quite a dark place. I don't think I'd have the endurance to get through it. But I've been in places where all I want are the weepies and the deep dark movies. So they can be cathartic and weirdly a kind of feel good in a perverse way. It's like, yeah, the suffering, like when you're going through a breakup, nothing better than watching a tragic romance. So media for all seasons.
Yeah, agreed. So this is the first book.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea for a second book? Are we going to get more? Is it going to get lit in here?
Oh my God. Lit up. I have been working on something involving villains. There hasn't been a book written on villains. We have lots of books about monsters. Like there's a robust robust body of scholarship on monsters, to the point where it's become a little field, like monster studies, monster theory. And I'm kind of compelled by villains and the heyday they're having in terms of origin stories like Joker or Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes with President Snow from the Hunger Games franchise. And, Wicked, Maleficent, Cruella, all these villain origin stories, we seem to be pivoting how we think about villains and finding them to be maybe more sympathetic. And I'm compelled by that shift. So I've been fiddling with a project that sort of tries to examine villains over time and tries to move past the basic thesis of this villain represents this fear. There it is. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, because funnily enough, I know more clearly what book I don't want to write. And I guess it's moving past into something a little more dimensional. That's proving challenging. But I'm really excited about that project, and hopefully it'll get legs one day.
Yeah, no, I think there's something there because you make bringing up Cruella, like that's one where I'm like, that's such a compelling character, and I do wonder if they're ever going to bother to try to connect the dots between that Cruella and the Cruella we know, because it seems like they're not necessarily the same person, and not make sort of like the Star Wars prequels odd choice of just like, well, you're never going to like him. He's going to be a boy for a second. You'll kind of be on his side, and then you're not going to like him for 2 movies because he's going to be bad. He's always bad.
That franchise, like Kylo Ren is that. I mean, like the internal revisions that you can so obviously see them doing between 2 and 3. Like, wow, okay. So I mean, that's also an interesting shit show in its own right. But yeah, Kylo Ren is a really good villain to dig into. Joe Goldberg from You. I mean, there really is a cultural conversation for sure that I'm hoping to tap into.
Nice. Did you have any parting thoughts that you want the folks at Skylight Books to have about As If?
I hope the parting thought is that you'll consider it, consider reading it. And if you do, I hope you find it enjoyable and thought-provoking. I hope also just more generally, maybe if you're reluctant to consider, girly media or happy boppy optimistic media, just maybe sit with that knee-jerk impulse a little bit and unpack why it is that art tends to be on the bottom of the cultural hierarchy. I think, that says something kind of interesting about our society, how it's a lot easier to valorize despair and melancholy than, hopefulness and optimism. So those are my parting thoughts. I also will say that I'm not on social media, so you can't find me. But if you read the book and you want to say hi, you can email me at my work email. If you just Google my name, you'll find me. And I'd love to hear from you if you have thoughts to share.
Oh, that's really great. And yeah, you should, if you're in the LA area, you should come to the Skylight Arts Annex. That's where all of our film books are. We got some copies of the book there. If you want to order from our website, skylightbooks.com, I think the guy on the tag is going to tell you to go to skylightbooks.com, but I just told you to do it too. Buy copies for you and all your friends who are big Clueless fans, as everyone should be. Thanks for being here, Veronica.
Thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Nice. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Skylight Books podcast series. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to check out the book featured in this episode, or others, please visit skylightbooks.com. If you're in the Los Angeles area, stop by for one of our live in-person author events. You can find a calendar on our website. If you like this podcast, leave us a review. It really helps us out. Our music is by Duck the Piano Wire. Till next time.